Good evening. Your time now is 5:52. I'm Jeanette Reyes.
And I'm Ona Kosarabdi, and this is Off the Record.
Not for real. This is Off the Record.
I just want to make life my
That spoke to my soul.
Please welcome Miss New York 2022 and TikTok superstar, Taryn Delaney.
777, thanks for calling heaven. This is Denise.
And that video had like 21 million views. I was like, is this good?
You mentioned that social media changed your life.
He stopped me and he goes, I noticed you keep calling yourself a comedian. I looked him in his eyes and I said, because I am one. When I was a kid, I always communicated in accents and characters.
What we love about you is that you're not afraid to be weird.
I'm off of watching me. She's like, we live in Washington. I wanted to be a diplomat. And if you want to get hired and you want to do well and you want to excel, you can't speak in a British accent. Where's my camera? It's right here. I love my husband. I climb him like a jungle gym. That's all you need to know.
Talk to me about the costumes, mustache.
What is there to say? But to live as an ideal is no life at all. You're not an ideal, you're a person. My only regrets have ever been when I...
Taryn, welcome to the group chat.
Oh my gosh, thanks.
We were so excited to have you on, by the way.
So excited. I literally just told you that I'm inserting myself into your friend group and I'm bringing Jeanette and you're not going to get rid of us.
I can't wait to have you. Thank you so much. You guys, y'all don't know this, but the chats happen before they roll the camera. So we've been having a whole little thing.
A whole conversation.
Yeah,
that's how you know it's
but
gonna
for
be
those
good.
of you, for people out there who don't know who you are, which I would be very sorry for you guys because you need to know her. And if you don't by the end of this, you will. Tell us about yourself.
Oh.
And also I'll just start with, I saw you come across my social media feeds and you are hilarious.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm a comedian. I'm an actor and a writer and a wife and a friend. And a girl. I'm just a girl at the end of the day. But yeah, before that, before I was a content creator. I'm not doing very well. I'm like, what am I?
You do all the things.
So let me start there. And it's funny when I say I'm a comedian, people always go, oh, where do you do stand up? And then I go, oh, I do it online. Sorry. So I am a content creator. I don't like the word influencer because I feel like when I say influencer, it means something different. But I will say I'm an influencer in the way that I share about my life online beyond just comedy and skits. And I'm getting into acting, which has been so much fun. But before any of this, I was just a normal person living in New York City whose life changed overnight because of the internet. That's like the most truthful thing I can say. I was a receptionist. Yeah.
I was going to ask you, is it hard to call yourself a comedian?
It used to be.
Yeah.
It really, really used to be because I was like, I'm just being funny online, but I didn't feel that I had the right to say I was an actor or a comedian or any of these things. And you realize that the difference between you and someone who calls themselves a comedian or an actor or whatever, or an artist, right? Is that they have the audacity to just call themselves that and then stand on business. And especially for me, when I really started making a living doing it as my full-time job, my manager was like, you're a comedian. And I was like, am I? And she was like, well, you have a manager, you have your own business, you'll hire people, you book jobs, you're a comedian. But then also, and I want to also say, but even if I wasn't booking jobs, I love when I meet people who are like, I'm an artist or whatever, and they don't make money doing it yet. They still are that thing.
Right.
And so now when I meet people and they're like, I'd like to do X, Y, and Z. I always say, no, you are. They're like, I'd like to be a writer. And I go, oh, do you write? And they go, yeah, I've written a book. You're a writer.
Yeah.
How many people do I meet that do that? I right now I work in sales, but I'd like to be a writer. Oh, really? Yeah, I've written a book. Okay, so you're a writer. You're a writer that works in sales.
My sister did that for me. I was like, I'm an aspiring journalist. I kept saying that. And she was like, no, you're a journalist. And this was like very early on in my career. She's like, you're a journalist. And I was like, you know what? I am.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, since then, I just
it's a power thing. And what's really amazing is I had so many people say that to me. I was actually on a red carpet and I was hired to interview people. And when I was done interviewing this one gentleman, and I apologize, I can't remember his name. He was a supporting actor in the film. Obviously, I'm not a very good journalist. When I finished interviewing him, he said, hey, so what do you want to do? And I said, I want to be doing what you're doing. He said, oh, you're an actor? And I said, I want to be an actor. And he goes, no, you are an actor. And he goes, you need to start speaking like that. You need to start thinking like that. And I said, thank you so much. And so I had so many people do that for me. And then finally, I had the opportunity to kind of test this where I was sitting in front of an executive, a really big executive at a very big network. And we're talking and going back and forth. And he's serious. Like, I'm having fun, I'm joking, and I'm making people laugh, but he won't laugh. He's very serious, and I can tell he's really holding back his smiles. I said, come on, man, throw me a bone. I'm giving you my best stuff. And one of the women on the panel of people I'm speaking to, the women says, and tell me a little bit more about X, Y, and Z. And I said, as a comedian, and then he stopped me and he goes, I noticed you keep calling yourself a comedian. And I looked him in the eye and my heart pounded, but I kept really cool. And I said, and I looked him in his eyes and I said, because I am one. And we had this stare off for maybe 37 seconds, which felt like 100 years. And then he went, I like that.
Eyes like twitching after a point.
Yeah. And I'm like, because I am one. And he said, I like that.
Yeah.
And then he continued on with our conversation. It was sort of him kind of, I think, sort of testing me.
Right.
100%.
Do you feel that you're a comedian?
Yeah.
And I'm saying, yes, I am a comedian. And that's power.
Yeah, there's power in words, right? And
There is.
recognizing that. You mentioned that social media changed your life.
Yeah.
What was your first viral video, and what was, because I feel like everybody remembers that. You
Yeah.
see the views going crazy and the likes and the comments streaming in. What was the video and how was that experience?
So at the time, I was living in a really bad apartment on the Upper East Side, which is now literally, as we speak, it's boarded up. Like, they're demolishing the building. It was that bad. It had black mold. It was like it had one of those exposed brick walls, but it would crumble onto the floor all the time. It was awful. And so I actually was so pumped though, because it was my first Manhattan apartment. So you couldn't tell me anything.
That's why I was like, bad is a relative term.
It's a
What are we
relative
talking?
term. I look back and I'm like, oh my God, I think that cough I couldn't get rid of was because I had mold poisoning. But it was so cute. So I was living in this really awful apartment on the Upper East Side. And at the time I was working on 57th Street. I was working in a call center. I was working as a receptionist and working in their call center. So I was broke. And I came home one day and I was laughing because when I would walk home to the Upper East Side, I would walk past Chanel and Saks. And so when I got in, I had this idea to do this funny video. Mind you, I didn't have a TikTok. I only had an Instagram, but my mom was like, oh my gosh, you should make this video. Put it on TikTok. People are like blowing up on there. And my mom was like, you're really funny. You should do it. And I thought, okay. So I made an account. I have no profile photo. I think I was Taryn Smithers 123 or something. No, it was Tarantino 21. That's what it was. And I made this video with a transatlantic accent, and the whole point of it was like, what it's like to live on the Upper East Side when you're not a squillionaire like your neighbors. And it was just like this funny video doing a tour of my really bad apartment in a transatlantic accent, as if I was a really wealthy woman, but like my cupboards don't open and the floors.
Do the accent again as your
Like when you're not a squillionaire like your neighbors. And so I just really embodied this really wealthy woman, and that video had like the next morning 21 million views. And because I didn't have a TikTok, I was like, is this good? I like went to my coworkers and I'm like, is this just like, I had no
21 million.
concept of the numbers. And people were like, this is really cool, a cool moment. And yeah, the rest is kind of history from there.
I remember that video actually. That's so funny. I associate you more with the Secretary in Heaven.
Yes.
Because I know that was like a
but I didn't
running
do that
series
for at
much
least
later.
two years later.
Yeah.
That didn't come along.
So what did that do for you? Did that like affirm anything for you? Did that like maybe I could
Denise
lean
was
into
when I
this?
really started identifying as somebody. I'm like, okay, I'm a good writer. Like, I'm just gonna say, I'm even like scared to say it on camera that I think I'm a good writer. Like, isn't that funny?
Yeah.
Like that we have
Yeah.
that feeling.
That's
like,
why I asked you about the comedian thing, because I feel like sometimes, particularly as like when you're in a creative space,
Yeah.
to say you do something, there's always going to be those people that either check you or you check yourself.
Yeah.
And so
I think we check ourselves first because we don't want anyone else to
Yeah.
check us.
Yeah.
So I'm like, I mean, but I don't think I'm that good of a writer. I just think I'm a pretty good writer. It's like, what's the point of doing that?
Yeah.
Right.
Man, screw it. Yeah, I think Denise has really helped me solidify. I like writing. I like comedic writing. I like building out these characters. And I love watching people fall in love with characters. I love watching people interact with these people that I created.
Where does that come from? Like younger Taryn, like how did your background influence your interest in this and your talent in it?
Oh my gosh, I've been weird since I could talk. And when I was a kid, I always communicated in accents and characters. I would be in such a character for so many weeks at a time that like my mom would be like, Taryn, you
Not
have to
weeks.
stop being British. You have to stop it. Mother, what you mean? Can I have bric-a-brac on toast?
She's like, on your mom.
She's like, we live in Washington. You've never left. What are you talking about? Yeah. I mean, I have ADHD, and I think that contributes to, like, I would hyperfixate on ideas or things or people or movies. Yeah. So I'd watch Titanic over and over and over and over again until I could literally do the entire film top to bottom. And I would do scenes from Titanic. But I would always choose to play the men because I thought it was so, there was something so fun and empowering about being somebody completely different than myself, right? Mm-hmm. So I always had so much fun doing this. And then as I got older, it turned into, I just became like everyone's favorite storyteller at the cocktail party, right? Mm-hmm. In college, I really excelled in any project in which we had to be, creative or do public speaking. So this was really fun for me. But I didn't think that I could make a career out of it simply because, well, I just was like, everybody wants to go into the entertainment industry. And I meet so many talented people every day. Yeah. And I don't think I'm any more talented than them. So what business do I have to pursue that dream? I should pursue different dreams.
So what were you pursuing at the time then?
I wanted to be a diplomat. I wanted to go into diplomacy and human rights work. And I could not get a job. Like, I could not get a job. I lived in Paris for a while. I was an unpaid intern in Paris, and I came back to New York. Pandemic hit. Then no one was hiring at the UN or in government work. And I would it drove me to tears all the time. I was so frustrated that I got my master's. I had a 4.0. I had some of the highest recommendations you could get. And I did all the things I was supposed to do, and I could not get hired. And to be fair, I definitely had some mentors that were like, you are going to have to curtail your personality somewhat in this line of work. Of course. They weren't wrong, though. I mean, they weren't saying be someone else. They weren't telling me to not honor my values. They were just saying,
this is a stuffy place.
Yeah. And if you want to get hired and you want to do well and you want to excel, you can't speak in a British accent. Like, hey, governor.
But you're the prime minister.
But you're the prime minister. Like, who is this person? Yeah. So I understood that. And so, I don't know, I think everything happens the way it's supposed to. I think it's really interesting that all these doors were just slammed in my face regarding what I thought I wanted to do. And then the entertainment industry and creative work, from the very beginning at least, it seemed so obvious that that's what I needed to go and do because I had all these people knocking on my door asking me to do it. And now I look back and I'm so glad because I think that a lot of the work that I wanted to do in human rights and diplomacy, while yes, I think it's really important work, I'm still able to do a lot of that. Yeah. Now with the platform, of course, it doesn't look the same the way I thought that it would. But my education has certainly helped me in my career. So
yeah. I wonder, because we had this conversation as well where we're like, yeah, but we went to school, we're journalists, like this is our professional career. We can't just walk away from it because of content creation.
Must have been scary.
You feel so stuck in this identity. So I wonder for you, like, do you feel like there was a part of you who was like, but no, I'm supposed to be a diplomat, even though people are like busting down your door and they're not even trying to mess with you like that.
Oh, for real. I mean, there was a time when I kept telling my manager, I just hope you know that I'm going to just do this until I get a real job. Yeah. And my manager, who was like, this is literally her real job, and her people that she manages, this is their real job. She's I love shows. She's probably going to watch this. Thank you for being so patient with me. She knew that was coming out of a place of insecurity and fear. I really didn't think I thought I was going to fail. But if I failed and I wasn't trying that hard, then it wouldn't hurt so much. So I had to always kind of maintain
it's
this.
Like managing your expectations with yourself.
With myself. Yeah. Of like, well, I mean, come on now. Like, I got a master's and I need to go and do that work, but I'm going to have fun with this until things with the pandemic go away or clear up. And then by the time we were on the other side of the pandemic, I mean, the rest was history. I was so deep into this and I found such a true love for this. And I have a community that I love so much. So I'm so grateful that that's how it worked out. For you, that's so interesting though, because I didn't have a lot to lose. I didn't have any real work experience. You guys were at the top of your game and you were in seats that a million people would kill to be. What made you take the leap and how scary was that?
That's a good question. I want you to go first because she left cold turkey. I still have my foot in. I got a big toe still in there. Yeah. But you left cold turkey, left everything behind. And this was something that you fought really hard for.
Yeah. I think it was when I realized One, my mom is similar to your mom, like very, very like on the same page, supportive. Like if you see something, go for it, and like throws resources your way. So she saw that it was with news, working all the holidays. It was like, good morning, Merry Christmas, Happy Thanksgiving. Like it was every holiday. It was exhaustion. It was a lot of hours on TV. It felt restrictive in many ways. And then also I started getting to the point where I was turning down more than I was making for much less effort. And for me, it wasn't so much the money that I could personally make. It was the way that I could impact my immediate family and extended family.
Sure.
So it got to the point, in fact, I gave them a litmus test. There was one thing, one kind of brand deal that I wanted to do somehow. And I said, if they say no, this is my sign. Within 3 months of my contract ending, I went from I would never leave this job, I love it because it was a great job, to that's my sign, I gotta go.
Yeah.
And I never looked back. Now, extended family didn't find out. Literally, my uncle found out I left news like 2 months ago, and it's been over a year. Like I kept things fairly private.
And why? Why didn't you tell people?
Because of that mindset that people feel like if you spent all of these years investing in this career, you went to school for it, you've spent over a decade in it, you've reached the top, why would you leave this? Like you're squandering all of this. You're turning your nose up at this. And I didn't want that to kind of like get in my head. Mm-hmm. So I didn't even go there with the conversation. I kept it fairly private because I knew that it would make me second guess my leaving. Mm-hmm. So, and that's certain. When they found out, it was just like, what is she doing? It was exactly as I had predicted. So yeah.
I would say for me, like I just went into, I pivoted into entertainment journalism, and that was something that I wanted to do, but I told myself I didn't want to do it, right, for the longest time. And I knew it was bad when my mom was like, what are you waiting for? Like, go, you know what I mean? And it was risky because this was seen as a more prestigious job. It was something that I like worked so hard for. It was my dream job. And what Jeanette's saying is not like made up in our heads. Like I get comments till this day that's like, so this is what you're doing? Or like, why would you leave? I don't understand why you left. And so it is seen as in a certain light, but I feel like in the end, I'm so much more happy.
Yeah.
And all the fears, like none of it came true. It was like the benefits outweigh all of the fears.
It's so weird. I literally got a comment like that a few days ago where a girl was like, I feel like you sold out, like you left news.
Someone said that to you?
And it was
sold out is a rough way to phrase that though.
Yeah.
But I thought it was interesting because I'm like, it's so interesting how people feel like you owe them. You owe them sticking to this career despite whether you like it or not, what it costs you mentally or otherwise. Like you owe us sticking to this. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Like they feel entitled
because we believed in you.
Because we believed in you.
Or like we were all rooting for you.
Because they're like, this is such a great career. Why would you leave? And it's like, why do I have to stick with something because you think it's great?
Yeah.
So it's this weird mentality of like, how dare you go on and try something that you just feel like doing just because.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I think, and that's something I've been really interested in the narrative around and talking to other women about, especially young women. I'm really interested in the discussion around how empowered we do or do not feel to change our minds. Being able to change your mind.
And reinvent yourself.
Yeah. There's a million ways to look at this or talk about this. One thing I'm discovering is, I was saying this earlier, are we more frightened of each other or of ourselves? Are we more frightened of what people will think that we changed our mind, or what's even worse and far scarier to unravel? Are we afraid of how we will feel about ourselves? Who am I if I can so quickly pivot, or not, if I can put all this time and energy into a job, a marriage, a friendship, right? And change my mind.
Yeah.
That's really scary to explore. And of course it's situation by situation. But I think this is the recurring
That's
thing.
That's such a good point. Yeah. It's like the audacity to change your mind, or the audacity to feel differently about something.
Does that make me? Yeah. And what does that make me?
And what does that
make me flaky? Or am I just
indecisive?
Evolving? Yeah.
Yeah.
And like, and then who the hell? And I've been saying for 6 years, I told everybody that I was going to be one thing.
Yeah.
And then either I got close or I didn't get close. And now I'm going to go over here. Yeah. What does that mean for me? What does that say about me?
I was worried that it would make me look disingenuous. Like maybe you didn't love your career as much as you said you did.
Yeah.
If you were able to walk away from it so easily.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I like, to your point, I think we don't embrace the freedom to evolve and reiterate, you know, like to embrace different iterations of ourselves.
Yeah.
You know? So did you feel any pressure from family? I wonder. Because your mom sounds like she was totally on board.
So, so my mom and dad both didn't go to college. So it was a really big deal for me and my brothers too. And I realized how many choices I made because I needed to prove something to my family and to myself. And I needed to represent this thing. But to live as an ideal is no life at all. You're not an ideal or a symbol or, you know, maybe you don't want to be your ancestors' wildest dream, although I would say all of us are. I understand though, living in those spaces is exhausting and so much pressure and so much emotion when in reality, you're a person. You make mistakes, you change your mind again. It doesn't mean that the person you were 5 years ago who wanted those things was disingenuous or untrue. In fact, that person had to exist so that you could live now. Mm-hmm. I had to want to move to New York and have this big, colorful life and work in government work and do diplomacy and help people so that I could discover this version of myself. I still want to help people. Mm-hmm. I still want to live in New York. But there's a lot of other things that have changed. Yeah. But I think you have to change. Anyway, so I'm really interested in that discussion
that spoke to my soul.
Yeah. Not an ideal.
Because we talk about that, and I've talked about it a lot on the podcast. Like, I'm first gen. And so for me, it was like, the analogy I used was like, it was a baton race, right? Like my parents did so much to like hand this over. And now I got this baton and I have to like keep running and go as far as I can. But I never set what that meant. Yes. So it's like I kept going so that I could be somebody's ideal or wildest dreams or, you know, fulfill this mission that was set way before me. And that led me to a lot of spaces that I was miserable. Yeah.
I'm thinking about how like every Disney Channel movie, they've been telling us for years.
They really have.
Dad, I don't want to run the car shop. I want to go to Princeton. And I'd be watching that like, you go to Princeton. Yeah, right? I'd be like, Troy Bolton, you better sing. You better sing. Tale as old as time.
Yes.
It's not a new idea.
But
and yet it feels new to us.
I was raised by immigrant parents. They're gonna be like, they said, Princeton, you gonna sing? And so in my head, I was like, Troy Bolton, don't sing. Don't sing.
You were like, Troy, what are you doing? Yeah. Oh my God, that's so true.
But so I want to know, because we started this conversation off camera because we were talking about what we love about you is that you're not afraid to be weird. And by weird, I just mean like funny, goofy, like show your personality. Yeah. And so we were wondering like how you're so free to do that as well. But also like, is there ever a time where you feel like, are people laughing at me or are they not? And when you do feel that way, what do you tell yourself?
I think I had to start thinking of, I hate the word authenticity because I think it started to lose its meaning and it's become an ambiguous term. But I still think it's a good word. I just think that now it requires context. So I think that I had to start viewing my authenticity in a way as a responsibility that I had not only to myself, but to others, specifically because I have a platform. Mm-hmm. So I had to think of it as every time you want to hide, this is so funny and makes me so joyful and I'm so proud of it. And then you have that moment of like, but maybe I don't want to put it out there because what will people think? Mm-hmm. I remind myself a couple things, which is one, I have a responsibility to people that feel like I do. I gotta jump on this grenade, man. Like I gotta be brave because I want everyone else to be brave too. So that's part of it. That's motivational to me, right? When it's not just about you. And then as far as when it is just about me, like we're all gonna die. Like we're not getting out of this alive. And I have to remind myself that all the time. If I, God forbid, if something were to happen to me, did I live every moment up until that last moment in a way that was real and true and loud and me? Did I honor that? So all of that said, I do still get self-conscious. I do still doubt myself. I don't feel embarrassed, but I would say I feel almost fatigued by being myself sometimes. I don't know if that makes any sense. Or I don't know if you've ever felt that way.
That makes sense. I wonder, do you ever, has there ever been a time where you regretted showing like all of you on social and you're like, y'all don't deserve this much of me, or maybe they didn't receive it the way you wanted?
Oprah had once said that, and I'm paraphrasing, but she basically said that was her one regret, and to keep it really private. And she said, Beyonce, you're smart, You're smart to keep your marriage
And she said
private.
Beyonce really took it to the next
I
level.
know. She was like, she said no.
Is she married? We don't know.
No. I get that. Now I don't presume to be as famous as Beyonce or Oprah, but I said to myself from the very beginning, I'm gonna keep my private life, especially something as sacred as my marriage and my relationship, private. I'm gonna keep this private because I love my husband and my husband loves me. And in the very beginning, when I would show my relationship bits and pieces of it, my husband is handsome.
Nope.
I'll tell you that. Noted. Where's my camera? It's right here.
Yeah.
I love my husband. I climb him like a jungle gym. That's all you need to know. When I would show bits and pieces of a relationship, a lot of those posts would like really blow up. This is like in the very beginning. But also the more they blew up, the more commentary we got on people
What they
just
saying?
making stories up about literally making stories up about my relationship or who makes more money or how he must feel or what he's like, or people. I'm really protective of my family and my husband. I didn't like people that made comments. I don't just mean comments about even, how he dressed or whatever, what he looks like, which is, again, my husband's very handsome. I love my husband. I'm just saying there's always a troll out there.
Oh, yeah.
I can take it. I can take people trolling my appearance. My friends and family never asked for that.
Yeah.
They didn't sign up for this. They're sort of these innocent bystanders. This isn't a passing of judgment. I'm impressed and surprised by the non-famous people in famous people's lives who end up, they seem okay with this. I feel for them so deeply because I know how much therapy this takes. Like, I know how much work this takes to put myself out there like that. None of you guys signed up for that. So I'm sorry that this is such a long roundabout answer. But what I wanted to say was my only regrets have ever been when I didn't honor my own boundaries with keeping my private life private. Every single time, like if I just said a little bit too much about my ideals on, marriage or relationships, I'll talk about it. Don't get me wrong. I will talk about it. I'm talking about it now. But I think you should have boundaries. I think you should have things that you will talk about and you won't talk about. Yeah. The only regrets I ever have is when I felt I didn't protect my private life well enough because I felt pressured in that moment to share more than I was ready to share.
Yeah. I know, I agree with that. We were saying on an earlier episode that whatever you share, people then feel entitled to continue to know about that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So like whatever I put out there, I have to feel comfortable with people consistently and continually asking me about that.
Because you can't all take it away.
You can't.
You can't take it back.
And people feel like now, like we have a right to know about this.
Yeah. And it started to become, so in the very beginning, I called my husband Edward when I was that transatlantic woman in the very beginning of my career. No.
Okay.
No one knew that wasn't his name. So people would start to be like, where's Edward? Where's Edward at? Show us Edward. People start commenting. I only followed her for Edward. Where's Edward? I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
Blocked.
First of all,
That was weird. It was a weird thing to
It's
say.
like a show. They're like, where's Edward?
And so then it started to turn into, I've even had people comment really mad at me. Like, why don't you show your husband more? Are you ashamed? And like getting mad. And I'm like, this emotion, the way you're reacting right now is exactly why I've made the right choice in picking and choosing when and how I share. You can see photos of my wedding. Again, I want to be really clear. It's not a secret. I love my husband. Like it makes me emotional. Like I love my husband. He like protects me in so many ways. And like this is like the one way that I can protect him too. And so that's why I pick and choose what I'll share.
I love that. And I think what people don't understand too is like, for example, if you were famous because you were an actress, you could focus on the craft and ignore it. But when on social, it's so intertwined with your personal life.
Totally.
It's you showing up as you, which is a blessing, but it could also be a curse.
Yeah, I'm characters, but I also share my personal life. And therefore, now. So now I think I have a good relationship. When my husband appears in something, people go, oh, this is so fun. I love when there's a sighting of your husband.
Yeah.
That's really nice. I'm like, I love it too. But it has to be on his terms and mine.
Speaking of personal lives and sharing all of that, I know a lot of people share very personal things with you when it comes to losses that they've experienced and grief and all of that. And you had mentioned there's a bite of yours that went viral where you talk about how much you love people.
Yeah.
Right? Like that's something that brings you joy, interacting with people. Talk to me about that interaction. It started with the secretary in heaven.
Yeah.
What is that like and what does that do for you?
Yeah, so now I have a folder in my inbox that my my team and I know to forward the personal messages to, and they're almost, the 90% of them are all long stories about people's loved ones that they've lost. Many of them open the email saying, I don't think you'll ever read this, but I want to talk about my dad, or I want to talk about my best friend or my son. And there are these long messages. I can never talk about it without crying. And I'm always worried that I'm going to start to get this reputation that I'm disingenuous because Taryn's always crying. She's always crying. So sometimes that makes me self-conscious. But this whole podcast, we've all been talking about authenticity. And so I will say it does make me emotional every time. But it's just because I'm so honored. Yeah. I'm so honored by it.
Can you explain Denise for those?
Sorry, I apologize.
No,
Denise, the Heavens Receptionist, is a character that is a comedic character. If you were to look her up right now, you'd probably mostly find comedy sketches. So I just play a receptionist in heaven. She's from New York. No one really knows where, whatever. And she welcomes the rich and famous. She welcomes people throughout history. And she also provides commentary on what she thinks of people that are Earthside. And what started to happen with that character is people loved Denise so very much that they started saying, I hope that something like this exists for my family member that I lost. I think my mom would love you. And I lost my mom. So I think about my mom greeting you. I just got a message this morning that I saved. A woman she said that her sister passed just the other night, and she closed her eyes and imagined Denise greeting her little sister. You know, like, I'm so honored by that. Like, it's such a privilege because for me, if I'm able to comfort you in even a small way, what a life worth living. That it makes me feel like life is so worthwhile that I could comfort you.
Does it ever weigh heavily on you when people are sharing this grief, especially if it's like a tragic death, like the trauma of it and like that kind of sorrow? Does it ever weigh heavy on you?
There are many things in the industry that weigh heavily on me. This is not one of them. And I think that's because I always compartmentalize it by, it's this one beautiful reminder, no matter how sad, our capacity to love each other. It's beyond my comprehension or words that I can say. How incredible that we can love each other so much. That feeling goes on and on and on long after we're gone. It's such a reminder that grief is such a universal experience, no matter where you come from or who you are, because love is such a universal experience.
Yeah, it reminds me of a saying, like grief is the price we pay for having loved someone.
Yeah.
Like or like grief is like love that has nowhere to go.
Yeah.
But it's really that, like everyone has loved someone. Yeah. And that's what you get when you lose someone. Right?
Yes. And we all will share in it.
Yeah.
We all have a share in it. We all have a share in each other. And so for me, it's really grounding to remember what matters, how loving people, trying to be as gentle as you can with people. I'm not saying I'm a saint. I don't think I'm always gentle on myself or on other people. I try to be, but it's a good reminder. It's a good reality check. And so I'm just so grateful that I can be a presence for people in that way. And in so many ways, it's not really about me. They're not really connecting with Taryn Delaney Smith. They're connecting with Denise.
Yeah.
So that doesn't weigh heavily in me in that way, other than the fact that it is hard to see people in pain. That's very sad.
I love that perspective though. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a great way to reframe it.
Yeah. I want to shift gears and talk about your pageantry background because it kind of seems like from what I've seen, this isn't something that you strived for your whole life. And did you just was it a friend that told you about it? Like you just kind of came upon it and decided to give it a try?
A high school teacher saw me sing in a talent show when I was 17. And she was like, I think you could be Miss America. And I still have braces on.
That is quite.
And I was like, what are you talking? I'm so down. It's insane. It was really insane. It was crazy. And I didn't see that for myself at all. But I think in the very beginning, it just was so exciting that somebody to be seen, to be so radically seen and have people for the first time in my life say like, I was used to being looked at. But there's a difference between being looked at and seen because I was loud and I was weird and I was always doing characters. I was like a theater kid, right?
But were you like the popular hot girl? Because you
want to weigh
cute.
in West
You're
Seattle
real
High
cute.
School class
I know, right?
2015. No, I was a cheerleader, right? I was a cheerleader, but that was more so because I like loved all the girls. Like I loved being in a girl group. It felt like having a big group of friends.
Yeah.
No. I was not. I was painfully odd. And I did not think I was beautiful or pretty at all.
Huh.
I actually for a really long time was like, that's okay. My mom used to always say, you know, there was always going to be someone prettier or faster or stronger. You can't focus so much on that. So my mom, it was never a big conversation in our household about whether or not I was pretty. My mom didn't want to make it a big conversation. Mm-hmm. And so I remember when I started in pageantry, I kind of turned to my mom and I was like, hey, turns out people think I'm kind of pretty, you know, out in the real world, outside of my high school where I don't feel wanted. I don't feel desirable. For the first time I experienced that at like 18, 19 years old. And my mom, I remember, was kind of almost horrified by this because my mom wanted so badly for me to not invest my worth there. She was right. But I needed to learn that on my own.
Why do you say she was right?
Because it's just so much work now for me to divest myself from what I look like.
Mentally or how you're perceived, how people see you? Like knowing your background.
Both. It's really interesting as a funny girl, as a comedian, how much you realize. Like, I saw a conversation once on TikTok where somebody was like, why haven't there ever been hot girls on anyone that's pretty on SNL? And then somebody responded somebody commented who is currently on SNL, a woman. And I'm sorry, I don't remember the names of these people, but I remember being really struck by this conversation. She kind of was like, well, damn. And so then of course it started this huge dialogue. Yeah. And somebody said, you cannot look at the headshots of these women that have been on SNL, these female comedians, and tell me they're not conventionally attractive. She would say most of them are. You've been conditioned to feel that they are not attractive because they're funny. You've been conditioned to see sexuality and what is desirable in women within a very confined and restricted way. Not only in how you look, but how you act and how you carry yourself and how you speak. And it's usually more associated with being quieter, demure, which is why that kind of thing. I was very much a victim of that, in which I'm none of how I identify, none of how I see the way that I act, the way that I want to move through the world is portrayed in movies and media as sexy. But I want to have fun. I want to laugh, and I don't want to cover my face when I laugh. I want to throw my head back and cackle. I just want to make life my bitch. Like, I want to have so much fun while I'm here. Yeah. And I was like, I don't know if I can do that and retain beauty standards and be considered beautiful or desirable. So it was cool being in pageantry. When I finally won Miss New York, I was 26. I would competed for many years before I hit the pinnacle and went to Miss America. And by then, thank God I didn't win when I was 20 years old. Thank God it was when I was later and when I was 26. Because by then I was really able to divest so much of the fact that I was like, people would comment and be like, how is this Miss New York? Like, I got that comment all the time on public forums. How is that our Miss New York? Like, you're telling me you're telling me this is the prettiest girl in New York, which is totally not what being Miss New York means, but whatever. I was able to let that roll off my back because I know why. I know why you don't find me attractive. It's not necessarily in me standing still. It's when I'm in motion, when I'm moving, when I'm talking, when I'm laughing, when I'm making jokes. That's unattractive to you. And
that's deep to come to that place mentally. I mean, otherwise it'll tear you down.
But it's not pretend like I don't have bad moments where it does get to me. It does.
But I will say, I think the reason I was so drawn to your content is because I feel like it's a part of you represent like a part of me that I am in my private life, right? Like the goofy person, the funny person. But I will say I 100% relate to what you were saying because I feel like there was a conscious decision that I made in high school where I was like, I don't want to be funny. I want to be hot. Like I want to be seen as conventionally attractive. And so with that, you do learn to talk less. You do learn to like, you're not going to make funny faces, right? Because you're like, oh, not this face. Like it has to, you know?
And suck it in and stand in a certain way and pose in a certain way.
For school and whatnot.
And when you're doing it all at one time, you are no longer in motion.
Right.
Yeah. You're frozen in time as this stupid, again, you're not an idea. You're not a symbol. You're a person. I
think especially in our case, because in news, You want to come off as credible. You want to be taken seriously.
Yeah.
You want to have gravitas and presence and all the things. And you can't both be funny and goofy and be credible.
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
So with news, it's sometimes spoken or unspoken. They'll tell you like, this stuff you're doing on social media, cut that out. It's hurting your credibility. They won't be able to take it.
It was spoken.
Right.
In several phone calls. Yes.
Yeah. And it's crazy how you start to internalize that like subconsciously.
Yeah.
We've had to have those conversations where it's like, why is it in the beginning when we get in front of the camera, we tap into our news anchor thing again? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And we shut off the keying that we did right before we sat down.
Yeah.
And it's because it's years of internalizing this idea of there's no gray area. You have to pick credibility or silly.
And
There was this article that not to interrupt you, but this article that Jeanette sent me that was like, I'm gonna paraphrase it, but it's like being ugly is freeing or something. And I don't, the way I took it was that it's not ugly, like you don't look good. It's more about like your whole fixation isn't on beauty, right? Because I think the beauty standard is supposed to be unattainable so that you buy more, that you invest more, that you always don't feel enough. And so you're never supposed to attain it. But what it does is it stops you. Like we talk about, for example, like going on the anchor desk, there is a lot of hours into like doing your hair, your makeup, your eye, like all this stuff that I felt like I could have read more. I could have like, prepared more, where guys just show up with their scraggly hair and they're like, what's up?
And men don't have any of that expectation.
And what's crazy is, and this is what also kind of led to my pivot, is I remember thinking these women are just tossed out once they hit a certain age and they're replaced with a new shiny thing. Meanwhile, this anchor is 70 years old, still on the man, still on the anchor desk. And no one is questioning his age or like, why isn't he retired and this, that, and the other. And that's when I was just like, oh, wow. Like society views you a certain way once you hit a certain age. Like looks are this prized thing. And in the end, you will always lose that game.
I think it's mainly because all the beauty standards, everything we're talking about is completely centered around the male gaze. How often is there somebody that we're like, I just find, like, I think the Barbie movie covered this really beautiful. When Barbie asked there's an elder woman, she goes, I think you're beautiful. And the elderly woman goes, why am I crying? The elderly woman goes, I know. That's that really cool moment in the Barbie film and I'm not trying to, I know people are like freaking out about the Barbie movie. I actually wasn't somebody that freaked out about the Barbie movie at all. But that scene was impactful to me because I think that is what we're talking about. So much of my early 20s, and I still fall prey to it now, is anytime that I don't feel beautiful, nothing's changed. It's that I'm suddenly don't feel that I'm living for or within the male gaze. And it's uncomfortable because especially when you're in pageantry, it's empowering, yes, but there's a level of, I competed in bathing suit. I competed in bikinis and heels with the spray tan and, the big hair. And hell, I look good. I look good. You go, girl.
I love that.
But I'm in such a different place now. That girl still exists within me, kind of frightened and scared. And like, am I still worthwhile? Am I still, if we're not attractive, who are we? Yeah.
Talk to me about the costumes. Mustache.
What does it say?
Who came up with the idea first, or were you guys both like?
That was me. And Tiffany's the best because she's like, oh, and we can do this. Like she builds on it. But I was like, what if we were? It started that we would just be in wigs. Yeah. We were like, what if every episode we just had different wigs on? And we never acknowledged the wigs.
That's what makes it so hilarious because y'all will have a complete conversation and there's no addressing.
I know. So we were like, frankly, so we go to the Park Lane, we have a couple espresso martinis, and we started talking, conceptualizing when we were like, okay, we're going to do a podcast, but we have to do it our way. And so I was like, well, what if we just always have that air of silliness, no matter what we're talking about, we always have wigs on. And we're like, what if as the seasons go on, the wigs get more and more grandiose and ridiculous, but we never talk about them. But then it kind of turned into full outfits. And I don't really know where the costumes came from, but I have a whole costume room in my apartment. So we have a full costume room. So we would just go in there before each episode and pull stuff out.
I love that.
And so you've seen my full plethora of my costumes. I definitely want to do an episode where we're dressed as Shrek, but like green makeup, prosthetics, everything. And I want it to be a really serious episode too, where we talk about like something crazy, something crazy. Like
I'll play I'll play Lord Farquaad.
And then the police came, and you're just like dressed as Shrek. What? Anyways,
my favorite skit of yours had to be when you guys were like, you want to talk about someone.
Yes, Kelly.
And you're trying to test the waters, so you're like, oh, Kelly.
That was
she's
so
great.
real. I mean, I love her. I'm not a gossip because I never gossip. I wouldn't do it. It's not to my taste. But if we were gonna gossip,
I've done that so many times with you where it's like, what do you think about? Oh yeah, no, she's cool. Yeah, no, I like her too.
You know what? When she looked at me, and then it just opens the door.
did you ever feel like my favorite thing is I love her?
Yeah.
Which is I'm always sad. I'm like, but what's she doing? Because if it's always just like, I love her, but it's kind of crazy how she's only attracted to married men.
I mean, just like,
somebody pulls a gun out and shoot in the sky.
it's a fictional story, but I already got an opinion.
That's so it's crazy. I love it. I love women. I love our villages.
We love a girl's girl.
Yes.
I love our villages.
I do also love the fact that you guys met in 2021, because I think so many people feel like they missed out. They don't have those childhood best friends.
Yes.
We only met
2019.
Yeah, 2019.
But I was shocked when you said that, and I felt the same way. I was like, oh my gosh, it's so good to see a friendship where y'all look like y'all go back.
Thank you.
It's 2021.
We
right?
love hearing that. That's like our favorite compliment.
Oh my gosh,
that we've
awesome.
only been friends a few years. But yeah, because when we first met, it was like, I feel like, where have you been all my life?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. A couple of things before we wrap. First, actually, one of our next episodes, we're talking about friendship.
Yeah.
Especially female friendships. What would you say is the most powerful thing, or the thing you love most about a girlfriend, that kind of friendship?
The cool thing about pageantry and Miss America and all that is there is a sisterhood. Like you do walk away with real, true friends, and literally going on a trip with them, with some forever miss at the end of the month, right? So it is like being in a sorority. Yeah. And one story that really struck me is I once, they had a Miss America come and meet with us. She was in her like 90s. And we asked her, all these years later, Miss America's been around for 100 years. So like, tell us about blah, blah, blah. And the only thing that she really wanted to get across to us, she didn't talk about her year as Miss America. She didn't talk about her career and how it helped or impacted her career. She said that she was at the bedside of her runners-up when they passed, and that throughout her like Miss America class, like they were at each other's weddings. They were there for when each other's children were born. And then, to come full circle, now that she's elderly, she has watched them pass away. She has held their hand while they passed away. And for many of them, it's because their spouse, had preceded them in death. And it so struck me, because I was like, that is womanhood. It has always been, and it will always be. Struggle, it transcends culture. We stand together. We hold each other's hands through everything, for better or for worse, because no one understands the way that we do. Yeah. And that is my favorite thing about girlhood. There's this understanding you're going to be there. Yeah. And I joke with Tiffany all the time. I'm like, you're going to be holding my wrinkled hand. You're going to be there. Yeah. And that's a really, really beautiful thing.
I love ending on that note.
Taryn, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you guys for another episode of Off the Record and tuning in. Make sure you subscribe and follow us on all the social platforms as well. And
subscribe
check
to our
out
podcast.
Love you, Taryn Delaney Smith on all platforms.
Ooh, I like that voice.
Love you. See you soon.
People would be watching the news for a very different reason with that.
We should have done the transatlantic. Okay, now, is she?
It's
Did
so
I do it? Did I do it? I get Southern.
I can't do that.
Listen, Shay. Listen, Brad, you got to get out there.
Off the record, you see?
Thanks for listening to Off the Record. That's all, folks.